recently the United States issued its national security strategy. And besides this, the Americans are going to commit a geopolitical suicide. They are abandoning Europe.
Germany is planning to spend a record high of more than 100 billion euros on defence as Chancellor Friedrich Merz makes his commitment to supporting Ukraine. He will join President Zelensky and President Macron tomorrow at Downing Street as Keir Starmer hosts the latest meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. The talks will be the first since Donald Trump's new security plan was published, which was widely critical of Europe. Joining us now is Nico Langer, former Chief of Staff to the German Defence Minister. Good morning, Nico.
Good morning.
Can I ask, first of all, what's at stake tomorrow? How will this compare with other Coalition of the Willing talks that have been held previously?
And the new situation is that the US has made clear again that European security has to be provided by the Europeans themselves, which is not surprising, but it's more serious than ever. And when it comes to Ukraine, after all the talks that have been there, starting with the so-called 28-point plan, the question is now, what will the Europeans contribute to security guarantees for Ukraine? Without security guarantees, without the security that Ukraine will not be attacked again, it will be very difficult for President Zelensky to negotiate at all. And let me add, it would be great if the Coalition of the Willing would actually be willing to do something.
So there's been quite a lot of shuttle diplomacy, hasn't there, recently between the US and Russia. How do Europe need to approach those latest rounds of peace talks that we've seen?
Yeah, I think the Europeans meeting between themselves, having long talks and then finding the bravery of calling Trump is not getting us anywhere when it comes to ceasefire and peace in Ukraine. The only option I see is that the Europeans build strength of their own and are becoming part of those talks. It's very unlikely that talks between Witkoff and Putin or Trump and Putin will be in Europeans' interest. But I think we had too many of those summits already without any result. And just another summit where everybody agrees that they in principle agree will not push the needle on this. We need action. We need, for example, a clear path forward for a European military presence in Ukraine. And I hope we will see something more than just agreeing with each other and hoping for Trump tomorrow.
The German army chief has said that contact between Berlin and the White House has effectively been cut off by the Pentagon. How would you respond to this? Is this the US just trying to distance itself from Europe?
No, I think this was taken out of context. He gave that interview in July, and it was about a specific situation in the transition of the US government. Somehow there was a hype about this right now because he had at some moment trouble finding somebody to send a text message to. The official contacts between Germany and the US are working fine.
Mm-hmm. Now, Germany obviously has significantly increased its spending on defence, as has countries like Poland and Lithuania. Do you think the UK and France are lagging behind on their commitment? Isn't it time that they stepped up now?
Yeah, I mean, the UK has been more forward-leaning on helping Ukraine in previous years. France is not doing what it could do when it comes to supporting Ukraine. And all three of them, I think, should decide that security of Europe and security of Ukraine are the same thing. The defense of Europe does not start somewhere west of Ukraine. It is going on in Ukraine right now. And I think the Nordic Baltic 8 countries, the countries on the eastern flank, they have decided this already, but it makes a big difference if Germany, UK and France could move toward that position. I would find that very important. And that's the only thing that impresses Putin. And the question how to defend against Putin and deter Putin is the key question in Europe right now. And it would also be good if all three of them would move forward when it comes to seizing the Russian assets, stopping the shadow fleet, and taking other concrete measures to send a message to Putin that we are willing and able to stop his aggression in Ukraine.
How confident are you that, if the United States did pull back, given its importance to this mission in terms of particularly air cover and intelligence sharing, how confident are you right now that if this was to happen in the next few months, that Europe would be able to fill out that breach?
What options do we have? I mean, do we say, okay, Ukraine is Russia now and Putin can push everybody around in Europe because we Europeans are not fast enough in building the military capabilities that we should build the last 20 years? I do not think, by the way, that the US will totally disappear from the scene in Europe and will take those military capabilities away completely. But the US are right in saying, look, you Europeans have to provide the main part of the conventional forces protecting Europe. We should have done that many years ago. It is a message that has been consistent throughout many US administrations. The new administration in the US is giving this to us in a very unfriendly way, but I think in the essence, they are right. And if you look at the economic power, the innovation power, the financial power of Europe, we are absolutely able of doing it. Maybe not the same old ways. I mean, just having the same old military planning and procurement system and just pouring a lot of money into it, that will not give the results. It should be combined with more radical reforms. And we see in Denmark, in Sweden, and other Scandinavian countries how it's done. So now it's for Germany to do it. And I feel good with Germany being a leader in this for the first time, spending most of the money going forward also when it comes to seizing the Russian assets. I think German leadership is appreciated in Europe now.
Finally, Nico, one of the concrete measures that could come out of this meeting tomorrow is a concrete proposal and decision on freezing those assets. Is that something you're hopeful for?
The macro-financial situation of Ukraine is very dire, and seizing the Russian assets is helping in that situation, sending the right message to Russia. It needs to be done, and I'm hopeful it will be done this year.
Joining us now is the former advisor to the Ministry of Defence in Ukraine and Executive Director at the Centre for Defence Studies, Alexander Khara. Welcome, Alexander.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. What will the coalition of the willing be hoping to achieve at this meeting?
Well, it's difficult to say because the whole idea was brilliant in the beginning, but it lost some shine after the discussions. We would love to have this coalition of willing to help us in certain ways. First and foremost, the so-called Sky Shield initiative, which means that our Western partners would protect Ukraine from incoming missiles and drones from the NATO countries. And it will greatly help us to redeploy our forces closer to those towns and cities that are not so well protected as Kiev or Lviv. This is going to be a really, really important contribution. And certainly we would love to see a clear plan how our partners may secure peace, even though I don't believe in a single slightest chance of peace with Russia anytime soon. But anyway, we would like to see what kind of security guarantees our partners are ready to provide us with.
Mm-hmm. On Friday, US and Ukrainian negotiators said real progress towards a deal depended on Russia's readiness to show serious commitment to long-term peace. Is Russia ever going to provide that readiness?
Not at all. Actually, may I start from afar? Recently, the United States issued its national security strategy. And besides this, the Americans are going to commit a geopolitical suicide. They are abandoning Europe. And the only reason they are engaged in talks with Russia is to restore strategic stability. It shows that the United States are not interested in Europe. They do not consider Russia as a threat, and they would gladly solve somehow the issue with Russia and Ukraine and move on. So that's why we will see that the Americans are right on the Russian side when they're talking about demands from the Russians towards Ukraine. And certainly there is another aspect to that, and with the leaks that we read the last week, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are in lucrative deals with Russia. So they're not interested in territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and the overall security in Europe, but rather to have something in their pockets after that deal is reached. So that's why I'm skeptical about any peace plan. And finally, Mr. Putin was welcomed as a great leader in India. And while talking to the Indian press, he said that he is going going to conquer not just Donbass, but so-called Novorossiya, which means the Russians are going to try to cut Ukraine from the Black Sea. It's not about eastern provinces. It's about southern and most important regions of Ukraine, including Odessa, where we still have Black Sea ports accessible to Ukraine.
There are concerns, aren't there, that the US might pull back completely on providing military support, particularly air support. Is Europe, frankly, ready to step up now if that happens?
Well, first of all, this administration abandoned Ukraine in the beginning. They are not providing us with a single bullet with this war. They are selling the weapons to Europeans, and Europeans providing them us with. Well, yes, certainly the Americans, if they withdrew from this process, it may damage our ability to defend ourselves because of intelligence, because of access to their defense market and things like that. Whether Europeans are ready or not, let's see how the Europeans are discussing the possibility to use immobilized Russian assets in Belgium for Ukraine's defense. Unfortunately, we've seen Prime Minister of this country decided that it's too risky for him to do something. And Europeans are coping with, let's say, chances of not financing Ukraine enough in the coming months. So I believe this show that there are some constraints. From the other hand, there are countries, the so-called coalition of the willing, that are ready to provide Ukraine with more and to be with us more in the coming years, not just months.
We hear a lot about these frozen Russian assets. Are you hoping that this meeting on Monday will finally have some concrete steps to unlocking those?
Oh, I hope so, but it's actually up to the European Union as a structure to provide sort of financial and legal guarantees to Belgium that they will not be facing Russia in courts vis-a-vis. So this is the most important thing. But I believe the Prime Minister of Belgium is threatened by Russia, and not just by legal actions, but subversion and acts of sabotage, cyber attacks that some other countries has been experienced since the beginning of this reinvasion of Ukraine. So the most important thing is for Brussels to decide how to help. And actually, there is a scheme. It's not an expropriation of those assets. Actually, the scheme is that these resources would be converted in sort of bonds, and then when Russia is ready to pay for its damage to Ukraine, those money will go back to Russia, and Russia will pay for what it did in Ukraine. So the scheme is pretty good, and it's legal, and it's possible to do. But certainly Belgium needs to have this possibly some political decision of the European Union.
Finally, Alexander, winter is coming. How brutal are the next few months going to be for Ukrainian soldiers?
Well, it might be one of the harshest winters in our history. For example, in Kiev, we are well protected by air defense, and we will have pretty robust energy system. But sometimes we don't have electricity for 14 hours. The Russians are targeting the civilian infrastructure, and particularly energy infrastructure. But I don't think it's going to break our will to resist, because majority of Ukrainians want this war to stop by diplomatic means. But from the other hand, they are not in position to agree on any territorial concessions, because they understand that it's not going to stop this war and to bring us not just lasting but just peace. So Ukrainians will be fighting on, and we hope that our European partners will be on our side. Unfortunately, Americans decided to be either neutral or rather on the Russian side.
Alexander Khara, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Gosh, it's going to be a fascinating day tomorrow, potentially, when the UK, German, French leaders all get together to discuss progress, and indeed President Zelensky will be in London as well, and discussing any potential progress in all of this. Notably, I saw that Russia have also welcomed the new US national security strategy that we've been reporting on over the course of the weekend, which the general consensus is that it takes a far more sort of confrontational approach to Europe, and if Russia's welcoming your national security strategy,
it's not a good look, is it?
It's not a great look, is it? Especially
No.
in the context of peace negotiations.
And look, the whole story of this year, and in terms of the peace process, is frankly that we're no further forward now than we were at the start when the coalition of the willing was announced back in February. And the suspicion throughout all of this is that Putin is simply playing for time so that he can just get more and more of the Donbass, and that when he's finally forced, if he is indeed forced, into sort of securing a peace or a ceasefire, that he's secured as much of that territory as possible.